Get away from me! He's dangerous! The voice of Mrs. Rebecca Stevens ripped through the chemistry classroom at Whitmore Preparatory Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the country. Her face flushed crimson, eyes wild with fear, hands trembling as she pointed at a black student standing just a few feet away. 17-year-old Marcus Johnson froze, confusion etched across his face. "Mrs. Stevens? What are you talking about?" he said softly, his palms open and visible. Gasps filled the air. Chairs screeched against the polished floor as students scrambled back. Dozens of phones lifted simultaneously, recording what was about to become one of the most infamous moments in Whitmore's history. And in the corner, watching with cold satisfaction, stood Brad Wellington, blond, entitled, and smirking. The smirk of someone watching his plan unfold flawlessly. Mrs. Stevens's voice trembled as she clutched her phone. "I need the police. Immediately! There's a violent black student threatening me and my class." Marcus's eyes widened. "Mrs. Stevens, you know me. I've been in your class all semester. Please, don't you dare talk back to me!" she shrieked, hysteria in her voice. "He's getting more aggressive by the second." Sirens began wailing in the distance. Students whispered in shock. Some looked away, others recorded every second, unsure of what they were witnessing. Marcus looked around, at faces he thought were friends, at teachers who'd praised him, and all he saw was fear and doubt. Then, in a calm but broken voice, he said, "If you're ready to hear this unbelievable story of injustice, revenge, and ultimate triumph, hit that subscribe button right now. Because this is only the beginning. To understand how this moment happened, how a top student became the target of a racist teacher and a jealous classmate, we have to go back. 2 months earlier. Marcus Johnson's first day at Whitmore Preparatory Academy was like stepping into another world. The marble floors shone like mirrors, the walls lined with portraits of senators, CEOs, and legacy families who'd sent their children here for generations. This wasn't just a school. It was an empire. And Marcus was an outsider. A transfer from Chicago, he had come after his mother's promotion, forced them to relocate. What no one knew, not the teachers, not even his classmates, was exactly who his mother was. Marcus wanted to earn his place on merit alone. From day one, he made waves. His test scores were perfect, not just high, flawless. He breezed through calculus, wrote essays that stunned teachers, and performed complex chemistry experiments with ease. Within weeks, Ivy League recruiters were already contacting the principal, but his success created a storm beneath the polished surface of Whitmore. At the top of the old hierarchy sat Brad Wellington, through 18 years old. Perfectly styled hair, designer blazer, and an ego inherited from 4 generations of privilege. His family's name was carved into Whitmore's very walls. Wellington Hall, the science wing, had been donated by his grandfather. Brad had grown up being told he was special. He was destined for Harvard, like his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather before him. He was the king of Whitmore, and everyone knew it. His entourage, Connor Hayes, the football captain, Dylan Pierce, the smooth-talking student body president, and Jason Thornfield, the spoiled son of a tech billionaire, followed his lead. They'd never been challenged, never been told no until Marcus Johnson arrived. The cracks started small. Brad first noticed the teacher's praise shifting, the way Mrs. Stevens lit up when Marcus answered questions, how the principal mentioned that brilliant new student in assembly. Then came the announcement of the National Science Competition, the most prestigious academic contest in the country. The winner would receive a guaranteed Harvard admission and a $100,000 scholarship. For Brad, this wasn't just a prize, it was destiny. His father had won it 30 years ago. His grandfather had placed second. Harvard had practically reserved a seat for him until Marcus scored higher on every test. Mrs. Stevens taught advanced chemistry, her domain. She had taught at Whitmore for 20 years and saw herself as a guardian of standards. She spoke endlessly about excellence, discipline, and upholding tradition. But beneath the surface lay resentment, a quiet, festering racism she'd hidden well over the years. When Marcus walked into her class that first day, confident, articulate, unfazed by the wealth and whiteness around him, something in her twisted. He wasn't nervous. He didn't act grateful. He acted like he belonged, and then he started outperforming everyone. His lab reports were perfect. His problem-solving skills unmatched. Mrs. Stevens pretended to be proud, but deep down she burned with something ugly, disbelief that someone like him could be better. While Marcus's brilliance inspired admiration among some teachers, it triggered something else among the school's privileged elite: fear. Brad watched his throne crumble. His friends noticed. "Looks like the genius from Chicago's coming for your crown," Dylan joked. Brad laughed it off publicly, but privately he seethed. That night, at the Wellington mansion, dinner conversation took a brutal turn. 4 generations. Bradley, his father, William Wellington, Jr., said from the head of the long mahogany table, "4 generations of Wellingtons have gone to Harvard. I will not have you be the first to break that tradition." He slid a newspaper across the table. The headline read, "Local Teen Genius Impresses Harvard Recruiters." Below it, Marcus's photo, confident, smiling. "This," his father said, tapping the article, "is the student everyone's talking about. 2 months, and he's already stealing headlines that should have been yours." Brad's throat went dry. His father's cold words echoed long after dinner ended. "Do whatever you have to. Failure is not an option." The next day, Brad overheard Mrs. Stevens speaking to another teacher. "These urban students come here thinking they're smarter than everyone else. They don't respect our traditions. Half of them shouldn't even be here." Brad stopped in the hall, realizing he'd just found his ally. That afternoon, he approached her privately. "Mrs. Stevens, can I talk to you?" She looked up from her desk. "Of course, Bradley. What's on your mind?" "It's about Marcus Johnson," he began. "Something doesn't add up. His clothes, his laptop, even his watch, they're all expensive. For a transfer from Chicago? Feels suspicious." She raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "I mean, he always has the right answer before you finish the question. It's like he's getting them from somewhere. Maybe cheating, or maybe he's involved in something else." "Something else?" Brad leaned closer, lowering his voice. "We've all heard what goes on in Chicago schools, gangs, drugs. Maybe that's how he's funding all this." Mrs. Stevens' eyes gleamed. "I've had my doubts, too. You might be right, Bradley. And right there, a teacher and a student, bound by envy and prejudice, formed an unholy alliance. Within weeks, Marcus's life turned into a quiet nightmare. Books vanished from his desk. His locker was vandalized. Slurs appeared on his notebooks. Students whispered as he passed. Someone posted fake messages online, accusing him of being a drug dealer. Marcus reported it once. Mrs. Stevens waved it off. "You're misinterpreting things, Mr. Johnson. Some students struggle to adjust to our environment. Perhaps you're too sensitive." He realized he was alone. When the science competition's selection tests arrived, Marcus once again aced them. Perfect score. Brad scored an 87. The announcement in the auditorium made headlines. The crowd roared with applause. Marcus stood tall, humble, but proud. Brad's face turned to stone. That same day, Harvard sent a representative, specifically to meet Marcus. Brad watched as the recruiter shook Marcus's hand and spent an hour talking to him. The recruiter didn't even glance Brad's way. Even Ashley, Brad's girlfriend, congratulated Marcus afterward. "You really deserve it," she said. "You worked hard for this." Something snapped inside Brad. That night, he decided if he couldn't beat Marcus, he'd destroy him. The next morning, before sunrise, Brad used his student council key to enter the chemistry lab. He found the spare storage key in Mrs. Stevens' drawer, just where he'd seen her hide it. He unlocked the equipment cabinet and removed several pieces of high-end spectroscopy gear worth over $5,000. He carefully placed them in his backpack, then snuck down the hall to Marcus's locker. Inside, he arranged the stolen items neatly, like a display. Then he printed fake screenshots from a burner phone, showing Marcus texting someone in Chicago about moving the merchandise. By the time the first bell rang, the trap was set. "Class," Mrs. Stevens said dramatically that morning, "something terrible has happened. Expensive laboratory equipment has gone missing. Over $5,000 worth." Students exchanged nervous glances. "This isn't just theft," she continued, pacing. "This is betrayal. Someone has violated Whitmore's trust. We'll begin locker searches immediately, starting with students who may have external connections." Every head turned toward Marcus. Within minutes, Principal Whitmore and school security arrived. Marcus's locker was opened, and the stolen items gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The hallway filled with murmurs. Students gasped. Phones recorded. Mrs. Stevens's face hardened. "Mr. Johnson, would you care to explain this?" Marcus's voice trembled, but he stood tall. "I've never seen this equipment before. Someone planted it." Brad stepped forward, playing his part perfectly. "Marcus, I defended you. How could you?" Dylan shook his head. "I can't believe it." "After everything, man." Ashley watched silently. She didn't believe it. Not entirely. The timing was too perfect. Mrs. Stevens folded her arms. "The evidence is right here. And printed text messages proving intent to sell. You've disgraced yourself and this institution. Why would I risk my future for this?" Marcus demanded. "Check the cameras. Check the data. I'm innocent." "Don't you lecture me about logic!" Mrs. Stevens screamed, voice cracking. Brad added softly, "He's getting aggressive, Mrs. Stevens. Maybe you should call security." Marcus looked around, his composure breaking. "I'm not being aggressive. I'm asking for fairness." But it was too late. Mrs. Stevens backed away dramatically, feigning fear. "Get away from me! He's dangerous!" she shrieked. Students screamed. Phones captured every second. Marcus raised his hands, backing away. "Mrs. Stevens, please." She pulled out her phone. 911! There's a violent black student threatening me and other students. He's out of control. Sirens wailed again. The same sirens that would change everything. The sound of sirens grew louder until red and blue lights flashed through the front windows of Whitmore Preparatory Academy. Within minutes, 2 officers, Collins and Hayes, entered the building, already tense from the call about a violent student. They expected chaos, broken glass, overturned desks, but what they found was a calm young man in a pressed school blazer, standing quietly with his hands up. "Are you the one causing the problem?" Officer Collins barked, already gripping his cuffs. "No, sir," Marcus said evenly. "There's been a mistake. I'm a student here. Someone planted that equipment in my locker." "Sure," Hayes sneered. "That's what they all say." "I can prove it," Marcus tried. "Check the security cameras." "Please, just—" Collins cut him off. "Hands behind your back now." Marcus obeyed, his voice still steady, though his heart hammered. "You're making a mistake." "Quiet," Hayes snapped. "You're lucky we're not taking you down harder." Principal Whitmore hovered nearby, his face pale. He'd seen many things in his career, but never something that felt this wrong. "Officers," he began carefully. "Perhaps we should verify—" "Sir," Collins interrupted sharply. "We were called about a violent suspect. Let us do our job." They twisted Marcus's arms roughly behind his back, cuffing him as students recorded the scene. "Please," Marcus said, "just let me call my mother." The officers exchanged mocking glances. "Mommy can't help you now, boy," Hayes laughed. "You're in the real world." They had no idea what that one phone call would unleash. Marcus took the phone offered by the principal. His hands shook, not from fear, but from fury. He dialed one number and said, "Mom, they're arresting me for something I didn't do." Then he hung up. No pleas, no panic. Just calm truth, the officers smirked. "That's it?" "Guess she's not too worried," Collins muttered. But 7 minutes later, their arrogance would vanish. Outside the school, 3 black SUVs rolled up, the kind that screamed federal authority. When the doors opened, agents in dark suits stepped out, scanning the area with sharp, professional eyes. Then a woman emerged, poised, commanding, her heels clicking against the marble steps. Her expression was controlled fury. Attorney General Victoria Johnson. United States Department of Justice, she announced, flashing her credentials. Where is my son? The hallway fell completely silent. Mrs. Stevens went white as paper. Brad's confident smirk evaporated. The two officers froze mid-motion. Collins stammered. We were responding to a call. The teacher said, Victoria's voice was low but cutting. A violent student? You mean my son Marcus Johnson, 17 years old, honor student, full academic record, never a single disciplinary action? She turned to her agents. Secure the premises. I want every second of school security footage from the last 24 hours. Pull metadata from every so-called text message used as evidence. Now. The agents moved immediately, a blur of professional precision. Within minutes, they were inside the school's control room, accessing security feeds and phone logs. Victoria walked over to Marcus. Despite the chaos, he stood tall, cuffed but composed. She cupped his face briefly, then turned back toward the officers. You will remove those cuffs, she ordered. Collins hesitated. Ma'am, with respect, remove them now. Her tone was calm, but even the agents nearby felt the authority behind it. Collins fumbled with the key and unlocked the cuffs. Victoria looked around the crowd, Mrs. Stevens trembling, students whispering, phones recording. Let me make something clear, she said. My son is not the one on trial here. This entire institution is. 10 minutes later, one of her agents returned from the control room. Ma'am, we found something. On the monitor. Clear as daylight, the video played. 42 a.m. Brad Wellington entering the chemistry lab, using a key from Mrs. Stevens's drawer. 49. Brad leaving the lab carrying a bag. 05. Brad opening Marcus's locker, looking both ways, placing the stolen equipment inside, then closing it quickly and walking away. Another angle showed him meeting Mrs. Stevens in the hallway moments later. Whispering something, gasps filled the room. The agents continued. The text messages allegedly from Marcus? Metadata shows they originated from a burner app linked to a phone purchased by Brad Wellington III. Victoria folded her arms. So, a criminal conspiracy and a hate crime. Mrs. Stevens sank into a chair. I didn't know, he said. Victoria turned sharply. You chose to believe a lie because it fit your prejudice. You called the police, described my son as violent, and put his life in danger. You could have gotten him killed. Her words hit like thunder. Brad's face went ghostly pale. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Oh, you meant every word, Victoria said coldly. And now you'll face what real consequences look like. She faced the officers next. Collins, Hayes, you arrested a minor without investigation, mocked him, and denied him due process. Under Title 18, Section 242, you violated his civil rights. You are hereby placed under arrest. The agents moved swiftly, cuffing the officers where they stood. The hallway buzzed with disbelief. The same handcuffs that had just restrained Marcus now locked around the wrists of his accusers. Mrs. Stevens gasped as Victoria turned toward her. Mrs. Stevens, your employment at this institution is terminated immediately. You will be charged with filing a false police report, defamation, and violation of federal civil rights statutes. Tears streamed down the teacher's face as agents led the officers away. Brad tried to step back, his voice shaking. It was supposed to be a joke. Victoria's gaze pinned him. You conspired to frame an innocent student, falsified evidence, and incited a dangerous confrontation that could have ended in tragedy. You will answer for every bit of it. Her words carried the weight of justice, the kind that cannot be bought or bribed. Agents, she said calmly, take him into custody. Two agents moved toward Brad. He struggled briefly before breaking down completely. I just wanted to protect my future, he sobbed. My dad said I couldn't fail. I couldn't lose to him. You didn't lose to Marcus because you weren't smart enough, Victoria said softly. You lost because you lacked integrity. The agents led him away. The story exploded nationwide within hours. News crews swarmed the campus. The footage of Marcus's arrest, the 911 call, and the federal takedown spread like wildfire. For the first time, the nation saw what really happens when racism hides behind privilege. That night, Attorney General Johnson held a press conference outside the Department of Justice. "My son Marcus was nearly destroyed by a system designed to protect people like Brad Wellington," she said. "This will not happen again, not at Whitmore, not anywhere." Behind her, Marcus stood quietly, looking exhausted but unbroken. Reporters shouted questions. "Marcus, what kept you calm through all of this?" He replied, "The truth, and knowing my mother would believe me." Under federal investigation, Whitmore's hidden rot came spilling out. Agents uncovered years of complaints ignored, minority students who had been quietly forced out, grades tampered with, teachers protecting legacies. Principal Whitmore was placed on leave. The Board of Trustees resigned in disgrace. Every day brought new revelations, and the world couldn't look away. Connor Hayes was the first of Brad's friends to break. Crying during interrogation, he said, "We just wanted him to leave. Brad said Marcus was ruining everything." Dylan confessed next. "We made fake accounts, fake rumors. We thought if we made him miserable, he'd transfer." Jason's powerful father issued a public statement condemning his son's behavior and withdrew all family donations from the school. Brad, meanwhile, sat in an interrogation room, trembling. "I didn't think it'd go this far," he said again and again. "I thought I could scare him off." But when shown the video evidence, he broke completely. "I hated him because he was better," he said through tears. "Because I spent my whole life thinking I was the best. And he proved I wasn't." A week later, the Department of Justice announced charges: Brad Wellington, theft, conspiracy, defamation, hate crime, civil rights violations; Mrs. Stevens, false reporting, abuse of authority, racial discrimination; Officers Collins and Hayes, civil rights violations under federal law; Whitmore, Academy's administration, subject to full federal oversight. The news sent shockwaves through elite education circles. Brad's father, desperate to salvage his empire, held a televised statement. "The Wellington family condemns Bradley's actions. We are severing all financial and personal ties." The boy who once represented Whitmore's perfection was now its biggest disgrace. But for Marcus, it wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. When he returned to Whitmore weeks later to collect his belongings, students lined the hallways. Some avoided his eyes, ashamed. Others clapped quietly as he passed. Ashley Morrison, her eyes red from crying, approached him. "Marcus, I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up sooner." Marcus gave a small, forgiving smile. "It's not about you. It's about the truth finally coming out." She nodded, tears falling. "You didn't deserve any of this." "I know," he said. "But maybe someone else won't have to go through it now." The weeks following the arrests shook Whitmore Preparatory Academy to its core. The elite school that once prided itself on tradition and excellence had become the epicenter of a national reckoning. News vans lined the streets. Headlines screamed about racism at America's most exclusive prep school, and talk shows debated the case nightly. Students whispered in hallways that used to echo with privilege. The name Marcus Johnson became a symbol, not just of brilliance, but of courage in the face of hate. While investigations unfolded, Marcus stayed silent publicly. He focused on finishing his semester remotely under supervision of Harvard's outreach program. His mother advised him to let justice run its course, and it did. Within a month, the consequences were swift and undeniable. Mrs. Rebecca Stevens, once Whitmore's most respected chemistry teacher, was found guilty of filing a false police report, defamation, and civil rights violations. The 911 recording sealed her fate, her voice screaming lies about a violent black student that never existed. The court sentenced her to 2 years in prison and 5 years probation. Her teaching license was permanently revoked. During sentencing, the judge said, "You were trusted to teach, not to terrorize." After her release, Mrs. Stevens struggled to find work. The woman who once commanded classrooms now worked the graveyard shift at a gas station, restocking shelves and staring at the clock. Her colleagues avoided her, her neighbors whispered, and her children, ashamed, stopped visiting. Behind bulletproof glass, she replayed that day in her mind over and over, realizing she had destroyed everything for the sake of her prejudice. Brad Wellington, once destined for Harvard, now sat in a courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit. His case became a symbol of privilege meeting accountability. His lawyer pleaded for leniency, arguing he was just a misguided youth. But the evidence, the stolen equipment, the fake messages, the conspiracy, was overwhelming. "I destroyed everything," Brad sobbed during his hearing. "I destroyed Marcus's life, my own future, my family's name, all because I was jealous." The judge showed no mercy. "You didn't just make a mistake. You weaponized lies and racism, and you nearly caused an innocent young man's death." Brad was sentenced to 18 months in juvenile detention, 3 years probation, and 1,000 hours of community service focused on racial awareness programs. His Harvard admission was rescinded. No university wanted his name attached to theirs. Even his own father, billionaire William Wellington Jr., cut him off completely. In a televised statement, he declared, "Bradley's actions do not represent our family. We denounce his behavior and will contribute millions to civil rights organizations to atone for the harm caused." Brad's name, once synonymous with privilege, became a cautionary tale. Connor Hayes, the football star, was expelled and lost his athletic scholarships. Dylan Pierce, once student body president, was stripped of all honors and barred from college leadership programs. Jason Thornfield was disowned by his father and sent to another state to finish school under a new identity. And as for officers Collins and Hayes, the federal case against them was brutal. Found guilty of violating civil rights under Title 18, Section 242, they were sentenced to federal prison. Stripped of badges and pensions, they now sat in isolation, their careers and reputations destroyed. But the biggest transformation happened within the walls of Whitmore. Preparatory Academy itself. Federal oversight turned the school upside down. The Department of Justice ordered a full civil rights audit. Hidden complaints surfaced. Stories from years past about discrimination quietly ignored. The old board resigned in disgrace. A new charter was written requiring Whitmore to achieve 40% minority enrollment within 2 years. Every teacher underwent mandatory bias and cultural sensitivity training. Anti-harassment policies became strict and enforceable. And the Wellington Science Wing? It was renamed the Marcus Johnson Center for Academic Excellence, the very building, once named after the family that tried to destroy him, now bore Marcus's name, forever symbolizing truth's victory over hate. 3 months later, Whitmore held a special assembly, its first ever diversity and inclusion forum. The auditorium was packed with students, parents, press, and government officials. The keynote speaker, Marcus Johnson. He walked on stage to a standing ovation. Cameras flashed, but his demeanor remained calm, humble, and steady, the same way it had been on the day he was accused. "I won't lie to you," Marcus began. "What happened to me here was painful. It changed how I see people and how people see me. But it also taught me something powerful." He paused, scanning the crowd of faces. Diverse now, not uniform like before. "I learned that truth is stronger than lies. That justice is more powerful than prejudice. And that one person's courage can change an entire institution." Applause thundered through the hall. He continued, "To every student here who's ever felt like they don't belong, remember this. They tried to silence me. They tried to destroy my future. But I refused to back down. And you shouldn't either." The ovation lasted several minutes. Students rose to their feet, clapping, some with tears in their eyes. Afterward, Marcus met with dozens of them. One young Latina girl told him, "Your story gave me the strength to report the bullying I've been facing." A shy black freshman said, "You showed me that being smart isn't something to be ashamed of." "Thank you." Those moments reminded Marcus why his struggle had mattered, because it wasn't just his victory. It was theirs too. Meanwhile, the legal ripples continued across the nation. The Department of Justice versus Whitmore Preparatory Academy case resulted in a multi-million-dollar civil settlement. Most of that money funded scholarships for underprivileged students. Marcus and his mother established the Johnson Foundation for Educational Equality, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting students from discrimination in private and public schools. Marcus became a national figure. Universities invited him to speak. News anchors called him the student who took down a system. But Marcus avoided fame. He focused on his studies, majoring in government and constitutional law at Harvard. What happened at Whitmore wasn't just about me, he told the Washington Post. It was about every kid who's ever been told they don't belong. I just happened to be the one who said, enough. Mrs. Stevens watched that interview from a small TV in the back of the gas station where she worked. Her uniform smelled of diesel and cleaning solution. The news anchor's words, Marcus Johnson, now a Harvard scholar and justice advocate, played over and over. Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, she whispered, I was wrong. No cameras. No audience. Just quiet regret. Brad, still serving his sentence, was required to attend racial awareness sessions with other juvenile offenders. In one recorded session, he admitted, I thought my privilege made me untouchable, but Marcus's strength showed me I wasn't even close to being the man I thought I was. When released, he faded from the spotlight, living under his mother's surname, working at a local bookstore. Occasionally, someone recognized him. Aren't you that Wellington kid? And he'd quietly nod, haunted by what he'd done. Marcus Johnson, meanwhile, continued to rise. At Harvard, professors praised his intelligence, but what impressed them most was his humility. He excelled academically, yet spent weekends volunteering with high school students from disadvantaged backgrounds, mentoring them on college applications and confidence. He founded the Justice Scholars Network, an initiative helping minority students access elite education safely and fairly. During a campus interview, Marcus said, People ask if I forgive them. The truth is, I already have. Because forgiveness isn't for them, it's for me. Carrying hate doesn't build change. Courage does? 2 years later, Marcus stood at the podium of Harvard Yard for his graduation speech. The sun bathed the crowd in golden light. His voice carried across the courtyard, strong, calm, resonant. They thought they could break me with lies, bullying, and false accusations, he said. They learned that truth always wins. But more importantly, they learned that when you try to destroy someone's future because of prejudice, you end up destroying your own. His classmates erupted in applause. His mother, seated in the front row, smiled through tears. Reporters captured the moment. The young man, once humiliated in handcuffs, now celebrated in honor robes. The story of Marcus Johnson didn't just end there. It sparked real change. Schools nationwide adopted new anti-bias policies. Federal grants funded programs promoting diversity in private institutions. And every year, hundreds of students applied for the Marcus Johnson Scholarship, created to help those who refuse to give up despite adversity. Marcus's name had become synonymous with justice, resilience, and hope. If you've been inspired by this story, the narrator's voice echoes, hit that subscribe button right now, because stories like this remind us that courage, truth, and integrity can still change the world. Marcus's final words during an interview summed up everything. They tried to silence me. Instead, they gave me a voice louder than ever. The screen fades to black as the words appear. Justice is not a privilege. It's a right, and it always wins.